Thank you, Suresh Bhai. And a very warm good evening. In fact, it's literally warm outside. So, to all of you friends, I thought of this subject, looking at life differently. See, we all look at life in so many ways. Sometimes we are in such a great hurry that perhaps we don't even have time to look at life or think of life. And therefore, friends, I want to bring some very unconventional thoughts to you this evening when I want to address to you on this very vital subject of let us take opportunity to look at life differently. I recall, friends, a few years ago when I was president at the Ahmedabad Management Association, I had started a series of interactions with very eminent persons, captains of business, industry, and leaders of different walks of life. And as a part of that, one of our speakers was, in those days, Mr. S.M. Datta, who used to be the chairman of Hindustan Lever, if you all recall. And after Mr. Datta, because Hindustan Lever, even today, but in those days, it was, in terms of market capitalization, one of the biggest companies. And therefore it was no small task cut out for him to chair that great company. And he was sharing his secrets of success, his stories of how he and his company achieved excellence. And at the end of the presentation, we had an interactive session when we were asking him questions. One of the questions that came to Mr. Datta was, "Sir, do you have any regrets in life?" And Sushim Datta said, "Yes. And I have a message to give to all executives." There were young and old executives thronging in the big auditorium to listen to him, one of the key persons of the Indian business and industry. And he said, narrating with a great poignancy in his heart, he said, "Friends, let me tell you, the price that I have paid in my life. When my children were young, and they were expecting me to give all the time to them, and they had the time, but I had no time for them. And today, I am nearing retirement, and I am wondering that if and when I would like to give time to them, whether they would have time for me, because they've all become busy executives themselves." What an irony of fate. Friends, you have everything in life in terms of material prosperity, but you are still missing so much. And what is it that we all miss in life, and why? What is the cause and what is the solution? These are thoughts on which we need to ponder on. And therefore, the first thought I would like to leave with you is, let us all determine to take out time. Take out time for life. Life is such a wonderful thing, friends. How many of us, in the rut of things that we do, have been able to enjoy the charm and the beauty of a morning sunrise, or the lovely spectacle of an evening sunset? The nature around us has so much to offer. Our own family, our kith and kin, our dear children, how much of time are we able to give for them? How much of time am I able to give for pursuing my own hobbies, my own interests? I'm going to talk something on time and time management as well. But as I said, this first important lesson of life we all need to remember is that we need to take out time. Time to live life so that we don't regret someday that we've lost. How do we do it, friends? See, let me tell you, one of the biggest problems most of us face all the time is that we are unable to live in the present. What I would like to call as, we are unable to experience the experience. See, you are there on your dinner table. Ideally speaking, you should be in a position to enjoy your meal to the hilt. But you are thinking of the past, something that happened in the morning or the previous day when you had a tiff with your boss, or you are worried about tomorrow, the presentation, and therefore even if you have the most delicious dishes on your table, dinner table, you are not able to enjoy them because you are not living in the present. Most of us, we tend to either live in the past or live in the future. And therefore we lose the exquisite charm of the moments of the present. Friends, just think of this. Just think of it. I am not saying that we have not to think of the past or the future. We have so many things to learn from the past. We have so many things to plan for the future. But in the process, let us not end up in missing enjoying the present. The present is extremely important. And therefore, as it has been rightly said, that the art of wise living is to be present in the present as a present. Just remember these words. The art of wise living is to be present in the present as a present. And if you experience an experience as a present experience, that is something which is going to make your life wonderful. But what happens? We impose our likes and dislikes on an experience. Whereas we should be taking every experience at its face value. We attach our likes and dislikes. And that totally changes the color of everything. One of the beautiful quotes, which I have treasured in my inspirational gems is that yesterday is but a dream and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness and every tomorrow a vision of hope. We have to remember this, friends, because today, yesterday was tomorrow, and tomorrow will become yesterday. And therefore, we cannot afford to lose every precious moment of our life. We must learn to live in the present. Somebody, I think an Ahmedabadi would understand this best, when it is put in these commercial terms, that yesterday is a cancelled check and tomorrow is a promissory note. But today is ready cash, so use it. And Ahmedabadi, immediately it will strike him. Suresh bhai, as the story goes, an Ahmedabadi doesn't want to give, he wants to take. And therefore, I'm sure you must have heard about this, that man who was drowning in the Kankaria lake. Somebody, the lifeguard by the coast, he went, in a boat to save that fellow, and he says, "Hey, give me your hand." The Ahmedabadi wouldn't give, because he is not used to giving anything. Last thing, giving hand, not realizing that he would lose his life. So the lifeguard realized, I'm in Ahmedabad. He says, "Please take my hand, catch it, hold it, come out." And the fellow popped up, So friends, this is something which is important. And this brings me, I talked about time, I talked about the present, I talked about experiencing the present. How do you make the most of it? I'm not here to give a talk on time management, but just if I were to share a few quick tips, I would say, friends, that time management begins with defining your priorities. Defining your priorities. If your priorities are right, Todd Duncan, he is one of the great motivational experts in the United States of America. And when he conducts the workshops, they are all conducted in the posh hotels. So he asks his audience, this beautiful premises where we are all sitting here, what do you think, in how much time must have it been built? How much of planning must have gone into it? And they would say that, well, at least 15 to 18 months, must have gone in. Wonderful. And then he says, what do you think is perhaps the most valuable or cherished for you? Then everybody would say, well, our own life. And then he would ask that if you think that even if you were in charge of constructing this building, you would have spent a good 15 to 18 months investing into how to bring out this beautiful building, tell me, how much time have you invested for your own life, planning your own life, prioritizing your goals? What is it that you want to achieve? And then he would say, 18 months, 18 days, 18 hours. And I think people would still have to shake their heads in no, that we have not even invested 18 hours. Friends, if we want to live life to its fullest, we will have to take out time, not only to live, but also to plan. And therefore you have to prioritize. Prioritize your goals, what you want to do in life. And once you have decided your priorities, then again you have to prioritize your priorities, because you'll have so many priorities and you can't achieve everything at a time. But you'll have to set out a timetable, just as a school boy or a school girl. If there is no timetable, just imagine, there would be no fun going to school. It would be all a mess. There has to be a timetable. And therefore, you have to prioritize your priorities, you have to review them, you have to balance them, friends. This balance, which I'll be talking a little more about later, is extremely important. It's not that we are not doing significant things. We are doing, most of us are doing. But then, it's because we are not able to achieve the balance of our priorities, that is where we go wrong. And another very valuable tip, friends, is that every one of you, just think of it. If you think your 24-hour day, there are what you would definitely rate as peak hours of performance. That is when you can really do the best. You are in best of your physical and mental shape. That is the time when you need to focus on all your important tasks. Focus on your important tasks, and that is what we call as a peak performance time, because that is when you are able to extract the most out of it. And then there are those low performance times as well. You have to monitor them. You have to ensure how you can rejuvenate them, revitalize those low performance times. If you can do that, that is something very valuable and significant. Another very important thing is you have to eliminate one of your biggest hurdle, and that is your time wasters. There are so many of them, absolutely irrelevant things distracting you, taking you out of focus. You have to be very conscious to eliminate those time wasters. You'll also have to learn what is known as the art of delegation. Many a times we spend our time on doing things, no doubt which are important, but which anybody else, either in our family or in our organization, could do. Then why hoon karu? If you want to be really effective, you will have to learn this art of delegation. And I think perhaps the most important thing is you must learn how to enjoy your work. Because if you enjoy your work, you will find that you have all the time to do it. See, most of the time it happens that you are not able to do things because you are not able to enjoy what you are doing. If you enjoy what you are doing, you will never feel the strain of it. These were just a few tidbits. Maybe we can talk out later if you have any questions. But these were some of the practical aspects which I wanted to mention. Friends, I would like to ask you a question. What do you think is most important to you in life? If I were to ask this young man sitting here, what do you think is most important to you in life? Career, so you are talking of what we call as success, right? Success is very important. But would you like to attain that kind of success which does not bring you happiness? So, what is coupled with success, almost as a sine qua non, is you would want success with happiness. Now, go and ask successful people, how many of them are in the real sense happy? Now, this is something, which is linked with each other so intrinsically. I have always thought of these two terms, success and happiness, in this context. When you said of success, you were thinking of career, right? Somebody may think of wealth, somebody may think of position, somebody may think of prosperity, somebody may think of recognition, right? So you are all wanting to get what you like, and therefore success can be, in a very simple way, friends, defined as success is getting what you like, right? Success is getting what you like. If you get what you like, you think you are successful, right? And what is happiness? Or when can you really be happy? Happiness, friends, in this same jargon, if success is getting what you like, then happiness should be, in the true sense, liking what you get. See, there are people, what happens, you say that, well, I'll be happy, when I get my career. And once you get your career, then you'll say, well, then I think I'll be happy if I become the president of the organization. You say, I'll be happy when I get a car, a big Ford or a BMW or something. You say, you'll be happy if you're able to take a foreign vacation with your family. So you are all postponing your happiness to certain points of time, that I'll be happy when I get this. And that keeps on eluding you all the time. And many a times it may be happy, you'll say, I'll be happy when I have more wealth than my neighbor. You have a lot of wealth, but you are unhappy because you have still less wealth than your neighbor or your friend or your brother. Now, friends, just think of it. Where does happiness lie? Many of us think that happiness is a destination or lies in a destination. Do you think that's right? No. Where really should happiness lie? Not just in the destination. Destination will obviously be covered because it's one point. But happiness should lie in the journey. And only if you can experience happiness in the journey and not make happiness a destination, then and then alone, friends, you will have really a meaningful life. And this has to be correlated with what I said first, living in the present. Because every moment, if you live in the present, as you go ahead, you've lived moment after moment after moment. This is extremely important, friends. Please, please, please don't postpone your happiness. Happiness, remember that it lies in the journey and not in the destination. And also remember that no amount of success carries any meaning if you are not happy. See, you have seen people who are filthy rich, but they are not happy because they can't sleep at night. They have so many worries and tensions and this and that. Is that happiness? In fact, sometimes we wonder, that is wealth a sine qua non for happiness? No. If it were so, as I said, in fact, the man on the street, many a times he has a much better quality of sleep and you find him more refreshed and, joyful than some of your billionaires. I'm not trying to undermine the importance of wealth, prosperity, recognition. Please don't misunderstand me. But what I'm trying to say is you will have to accept this as a part of your life, that while success is getting what you like, happiness should be liking what you get. And if you like what you get, if you have a contentment not in the sense that there is a complacency that you don't do anything or don't achieve anything in life. You must have, if you are a career oriented, have your goals and have your mission. But then don't be frustrated or disillusioned or disappointed. If in proportion to your effort you may not get the result sometime. Still, and I think that, if Suresh Bhai, we really think of, I've often tried to interpret in my own little humble way as to what this eternal words of Gita, karmanyevadhikaraste, mean. I think that, if you really think of it, means this, that do your best, and that is success. Sometimes you fail, but as they say, John Maxwell has written a book title on that, Failing Forward. You might wonder, what is that? How is failing related to going forward? He says, yes, you can fail and still you can fail forward, because even in your failure, there lies an achievement. And if you develop that attitude, I'll be talking about happiness as an attitude a very short while now. But if you develop what we call as this happiness as an attitude, and if you have this mindset of yours that in every challenge or adversity, you are able to look at the seed of an opportunity which can be transformed into prosperity. Friends, this is known as the golden egg technique. Most of us, we get unhappy in life because we think we are not able to, get what we always wanted. But I tell you, this golden egg technique, if you once start learning it, it will show you that in anything or everything that happens in your life, there is a message which you can take. Just as, you can always think, if you think that there is a piece of gold in the egg, you'll just try to, disseminate that in a manner that you are able to spot it. And bang on, you'll be able to get something. So look as they say, positive even in the adversity. And if that is your approach, Helen Keller, I'm sure all of you know what handicaps she had in life. But what a remarkable personality she was. And she has in her, works, I think this is one of the most beautiful quotes Helen Keller has offered to mankind when she said that when one door of happiness closes, another opens. When one door of happiness closes, another opens, but often we look so long and so regretfully on the closed door that we do not see the new door which has opened for us. Friends, if you really try looking at opportunities, even in failures, even in adversities, even in challenges, even in the worst of your times, let me tell you, let me assure you, if you start looking at life differently from this point of view, as they say, every black cloud has a silver lining, and it's true. You have to just spot that. And as Helen Keller says, look at the new door. Don't look at the closed door. Look at the door which has now opened for you. And therefore, when I was talking of happiness, friends, happiness is as an attitude, a set of mind. Because until you are happy with who you are, just remember these words, until you are happy with who you are, you will never be happy because of what you have. Happiness we don't get by what we have with us. Happiness is what we get because of what we are, because of what we think. And therefore happiness, they say, is a state of mind. What is happiness? Happiness is a state of mind. Friends, you have to remember that if you are happy mentally with that mindset, you will find happiness even in hell. But with the negative mindset, even in heaven, it will be hell for you. And don't you see this? So many people, we wonder what is missing in their life. They have everything, but they are not able to count their blessings. They count only the curses. And as I said, the curses are also not real curses. They are not real curses. If you try to look into those curses, lie the golden opportunities for your life for tomorrow, for the future. And therefore, I think this is one important thing. And happiness goes with very intricately, very deeply associated and connected, interlinked with what we call as peace of mind. If you have to achieve peace of mind, I don't think anybody can say he's really happy if he has a disturbed mind. So that brings us to the question, how do you get the peace of mind, the joy of life? And I referred to time management earlier, because time management is important when you are handling your external world. But then there is your internal world as well. And your internal world is intricately linked with another very significant art of management, and that is mind management. Mind management. How do you manage your mind? Very important question. You look at scriptures, you look at the greatest philosophies all around. There is a simple, down-to-earth secret of that. The more difficult thing is how to achieve it. We'll talk a little bit about that also. But the golden truth is that be the master of your mind. Be the master of your mind rather than the mind being your master. Because the moment your mind becomes your master, then your thoughts control you and you lose control on yourself and on your life. Now this is extremely important because as I was saying earlier, what is heaven and what is hell? Somebody has very beautifully said that heaven and hell are nothing but states of mind. Don't you think so? When you think that you are on the top of this world, that is heaven. And when you feel most miserable, it is hell for you. Now the question is, who creates this heaven and hell for you? Who? Your own mind. We do that. We do that. Don't forget that. We talked about happiness earlier. People say, I am unhappy. Why? Because somebody told me this. My teacher scolded me. The daughter-in-law will say, my mother-in-law had a tiff with me. The son will say, my father doesn't understand me. The husband is complaining that my wife is nagging me. And that's why you have all kinds of reasons you want to give for your being unhappy. But the golden truth, friends, all of us need to remember, and that is intricately linked with our mind management, is always remember, as they say, always remember that no one can make you unhappy without your consent. Just think of it, friends. Why are you unhappy? Because you want to be unhappy. See, there are two people in the same situation. One is happy, one is unhappy. So is the situation responsible for making you happy or unhappy? No. Somebody is happy with one person but another is unhappy with that person. Is the person responsible for making you happy or unhappy? No. Just try to think of this simple logic, as we think of logic. As a young student, I see so many young friends here. As you would solve a theorem in your geometry, based on logic, just try to think of this. It is not people, it is not situations that make you happy or unhappy. The happiness lies in the state of your mind, and so does the unhappiness. And therefore, friends, always remember that heaven and hell are both states of mind. And if you want to become the master of your mind, what is the answer to that? How do you do it? You have any solutions? Anybody can volunteer? What could be the answer to how do you manage and monitor or control your mind? Friends, that is best done by what I call as conditioning of your mind. You have to condition your mind. The law of conditioning is such, anything that is conditioned to, adapt to situations, it will easily and comfortably adapt. And once you do it with reason, with logic, with understanding, you are able to do this conditioning of minds. And conditioning of minds, conditioning of your thoughts can be best done by having what I would say as your own value system or value culture. Now, what is the meaning of a value? Will anybody tell me what is a value? Value, as the word itself connotes, is something that is very valuable or very important or very significant for you. See, your value may be that, I am a strict vegetarian. See, that is one of your values of life. That, I believe in non-violence. That's a value you adhere to. Yes, your belief system, something where you attach a lot of importance to that. There are others, and we say that, this, therefore we talk of value-oriented education. That you inculcate good values in the children, and if their foundation is strong, the superstructure or edifice will easily come up. You don't find any problems with teenagers or youth, who have had a good childhood. A good childhood means where they have been nurtured up well. But when you find, even when you go to look at, this is almost a science, that the life of criminals has been analyzed, and they come to this one conclusion, that somewhere behind that criminal psyche is something which has generated, or you can say degenerated to this level. So it's not that. So that has happened on account of conditioning, and conditioning can happen in several ways. I think we all are very responsible as parents. I think we have a great role to play in the growing up of our children. Because you just, even a plant, if it is allowed to grow wild, it will just be wild grass or a weed. If a plant is not taken care of well, not nurtured well, not watered well, not protected well, even a plant, the law of nature is such, will not grow well, will not grow strong, will not grow healthy. Then how could it be otherwise with mankind? But what I was trying to mention is, friends, these values, when you have conditioned your value system, then your values, they start controlling your thoughts. See, like for a person who is an alcoholic, his value is, oh, what does it matter? I can be an alcoholic. And until this set of value does not change, his thoughts, his acts, his behavior will not change. Because, friends, it has been very appropriately said that, you see, ultimately every action generates from a seed of thought. A thought is a seed, and the action is just like the blossoming, of the plant. And the fruits that you get is the joy or the misery, the happiness or the suffering. And therefore, this conditioning is extremely important, friends. And this brings me to a very important aspect of our life, our day-to-day life, friends. I see here parents, who would be facing this as fathers and mothers, or grandfathers and grandmothers with their younger generation. There would be husbands and wives, their problems are also not small. There is also the problem people talk on, the younger generation keeps on complaining about the older generation. And this has happened from the times of Aristotle. Sometimes I go to schools and teachers say, our students, our young generation is going to the dogs. And then I remind them, do you know that centuries ago, even Aristotle in his time had said and noted this observation, that youth is going to the dogs. Probably every generation feels it that way. But then, where lies the solution? Talking of relationships, because it's very important, friends. When you talk of happiness, relationship is an integral part of it. Most important thing is, be at peace with your own mind, with your own self. Just try it out, That's why one of the simplest tips I think you get, people who are tempted to get angry, with every provocation that comes up to them. What are they told? That when you feel like getting angry, count 1 to 10. Why? Because in the process that you will count 1 to 10, that will be that cooling or calming or soothing effect, and it will melt down. It's just a small example, friends. But what I am trying to mention is, when do conflicts arise? Sometimes we all get into arguments. And let me tell you, friends, they say that there are no winners in an argument. There are no winners, because even the person who thinks he has won, he has lost, because vis-a-vis the other person, though he may inflate his ego by thinking that he has won the argument, he has lost, at least the consideration from the other side. So, arguments never help. Please remember this, friends, that if you really want to maintain the balance, the delicacy, the charm of a relationship, what would you say one thing is most important in a relationship? Understanding or consideration. See, the problem is the three-letter word, ego, or the one-letter word, I. Always I think of I and I think of ego, E-G-O. They say ego is edging God out. When you have an ego, that means God is nowhere near around you. Because that is, see, there is a difference between Swaman and Abhiman. Self-esteem is very important. But ego is no good. And many a times we forget the distinction between the self-esteem and the ego. And that gives rise to problems. Because what happens is, friends, we are not just whenever there is a difficulty in your relationship, if you start viewing the situation from the other person's point of view, let me assure you, friends, you will immediately get pacified. And the moment you decide and you condition your mind that you are going to keep cool, no matter what. See, the simplest example I can give you, a young lady sitting there. What would happen if I take a stone and I throw, zoom, bang? It will go and smash with this wall. Collision, right? But if there was vacuum, if there was nothing in between, what will happen? You throw the stone and the stone will go the other side. No problems, no collisions. Now what is it? In most of the situations, it is your ego that stands out as a wall. And because somebody says something, it clashes with you, hurts your ego, and there starts the problem. Blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on and on and on. And then, what happens, friends? As I said, there are no winners in an argument. No winners in an argument. Let me ask you a simple question, friends. If I ask you, okay, how heavy is this glass? What will be your answer? How heavy is this glass? Anybody? Well, the true answer is it all depends. How long you hold it. If I have to hold it for a minute, it's not weighty. I can hold it. But if I have to hold it for an hour, it's much more weighty, I feel. And if I have to hold it for a day, what would I say? It's torture. Now, it is relative. The problem is, if I just hold this glass and keep it down, whatever heavy, even, as you know, the weightlifters, what do? They lift the heaviest of the weights, do it like this, then can they hold it for long? No, they'll throw it. Now what happens is, friend, just think in our life, how do our miseries start? Because we believe in holding on to things. Somebody has said something that would hurt me the day before yesterday. I didn't sleep the whole night. Yesterday was all the time miserable. Even today it is there at the top of my mind. And therefore, I am carrying the weight of it all the time. So therefore, as they say, what should you do? You should let it go. Friends, this art of learning to let go, I tell you, it's one of the most wonderful secrets of life. Okay, fine, this morning you met me. I had a tiff, a tussle, a clash with you. First of all, if I had conditioned my mind all right, this morning I would have had no problem, because I would have just stood there as a vacuum and you would have been throwing stones, which are going there in wilderness. Because I am not standing there as a wall for the ego to clash. But nonetheless, suppose it happened. And if I'm able to forget, I let go, no problems. And then I meet you and I'm fine. If I start behaving all right, don't you think the things will change and change radically? Suresh bhai, there's a very beautiful story. I like it very much. It is about a lady. And if ladies in India think that this Saas Bahu problems, are only in our country, you're mistaken. This daughter-in-law, mother-in-law, Saas Bahu problems are there all over the world. And this story is about a Taoist monk, in China. And a lady, a daughter-in-law, young daughter-in-law was having lots of problems with her mother-in-law. She went and complained to the monk saying that, monk, please, I'm fed up of my mother-in-law. And I've come here to just give me some medicine, that I can administer to her and finish. Baat khatam ho jaye, she's off from this world. With such hatred in her mind and heart against the mother-in-law. The monk said, well, there is something I can give you, but it'll take some time, maybe at least about 2 months, and you have to follow, something very religiously. Here is a medicine that I am giving you, and you will have to offer tea to your mother-in-law 3 times in a day. But there is a condition, this medicine will only show its effect or work, what you want, if while putting this medicine in the tea, you stir it with lot of love and affection. Put this medicine in the cup of tea and stir it with lot of affection and goodwill, for your mother-in-law, and give it to her 3 times in a day. And it will work in about 2 months. And the daughter-in-law went home, started from the next day administering this. After 1 month, she came again to the monk. Monk said, what's the problem now? Still, I told you 2 months. No, I have come because only 1 month has passed. But now I don't want my mother-in-law to die. I want her to live. Why? Because now, she has changed completely. She's behaving with me so nicely, and I have started liking her. And therefore I want her to live. Now you give another medicine that she can live. And the monk said, it's not the medicine, it's your attitude to your mother-in-law that has changed her. Friends, this is a very small story, but it conveys a very strong and powerful message. There are some people, we call them as Ajata Shatru. Don't we? Now our friend Suresh bhai sitting here, always smiling, always calm, cheerful. Even if he takes the classes, students love him. Why? Because he has such balance, such composure, nobody will have any problems with him. I'm sure Mrs. Mashruwala also must be very happy. Or even if, she is sometimes unhappy, he has the art of, making her happy. So you can always do it, don't worry. But what I'm trying to say is, there are people who are, as we call as Ajata Shatru, as if they don't have any enemies at all. Now what is so wonderful in them? Because they have practiced, this wonderful secret of life, of learning to let go. Friends, just try it out. Husbands, fathers, children, if you, because, as they say, it is very difficult for you to change the other person. What is the best thing you can do? You have control over yourself, so you can change yourself. And the best way you can change yourself, and therefore there is a beautiful quote I once again have compiled in my Inspirational Gems. It says, and just think over it, friends. See, if I think the biggest, as I started with, the biggest, I think, charm of life is that every day we get a few minutes to think on all these finer aspects of life. Life would be wonderful, let me tell you. It says, God, grant me the serenity. It's in the form of a prayer. God, grant me the serenity. Serenity is that calmness, that peace of mind, that composure, that balance, that harmony. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. There are some things in life, some people, some situations you cannot change. Don't worry about it. Just tell God, give me that calmness or serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can. Courage to change the things I can. And the last part is very important. And the wisdom to know the difference. The difference between what you can change and what you cannot change. But friends, if you start practicing this art, I tell you, life would be completely a different experience. You have to just determine and try it out. Because how to live your life is your choice. There's only one thing where you have 100% choice. You have no choice, no control, nothing over others. But one choice, 100% control you have is over your own self. How to live your life, it's your choice. How to react to people and how to react to situations is again your choice. See, I think one of the best things we can learn from the saintly people is this. As they say, I'm sure you must have heard about this anecdote that Lord Buddha, when he had achieved enlightenment, he was walking by along with his young disciples, some of them whom had joined very recently. And, even saints have to face all kinds of abuse at times. Some village people, they were throwing dirty abuses at Buddha. And Buddha was unperturbed. He was just walking, cheerfully in his own mood and style. And one of the young disciples said, Lord, you are not bothered? They are using such filthy language, abusive language, and you are not even perturbed about it. And Buddha told the disciple, well, if I want to give you something and you refuse to accept it, where does that thing lie? With you or me? He said, obviously, if you want to give me something and I don't accept it, it lies with you. He says, I refuse to accept whatever they are telling me, whatever they are addressing me. It's only if I accept what they are trying to tell me, I have accepted it, and then the problems start. And many a times, friends, problems even get more complex because we add our own personal overtones to that. Sometimes somebody has very jokingly or in a lighter vein called you a gadedo. Chalo, gadedo. But whereas, there is only a 5% original tone in it, you add 90% of your own weight into it. And therefore, that gadero becomes 95% serious for you. This is a small example, friends. We try to laugh it out. But don't you think that many a times, we try to unnecessarily add the best thing is to do what, Buddha did. Ignore. If somebody offers a criticism which is fair and proper, accept it, learn from it, because it's for your own good. But if he says something, somebody tries to say something which you think you don't deserve, means he's absolutely trying to do mudslinging at you, don't be perturbed about it. It's okay. I know it's easier said than done. It's not easy. But then, friends, we are all here to look at life differently. And why? Because we all want, as our young friend said, success and happiness. If you want success, if you want happiness, then, friends, you have to make your own rules of the game. You have to play the game you should be playing yourself. Just determine and decide that nobody in this world can ever make my life miserable. Why? Because my life is mine. It is mine. I have control over my life. I have control over my thoughts. I have control over my emotions. And therefore, nobody, no person, no situation in this world can make me miserable. Friends, if this would be your determination, let me tell you, it will be one of the greatest achievements of practicing life management. Therefore, there is a beautiful slogan which you can all remember for your life, and that is float, not fight in the ocean of life. Float, not fight in the ocean of life. Now, this slogan, I've carved out based on what I had read once, that, have you seen by these popular seashores, look at Hawaii, or maybe you can even find it at Goa. There are those huge waves coming up in the sea. And there are people who are just floating, absolutely on the water, so lightly. Now imagine, how could this be happening? There are those wild waves going like this, but then, it's a sport in itself and you can learn it very well, but that sport gives you a message that if you start learning, the art of floating in life, and if you have to float, that means you have to become almost weightless. Because if you make yourself light, as they say, even go to a swimming pool, there are people who just float like this. The tutor will tell them, if you want to float, just be light. Problems start, who gets drowned? Have you ever seen a dead body drown? The irony of life is that dead bodies float. And living people who struggle, they are the ones who go deep down at the bottom of the ocean. And after they are down, then as dead bodies, they come up again and float. ગુજરાતીમાં બહુ સરસ મુક્તક છે મિત્રો. સમયના પાલવમાં છે બધું દરિયાને દોષ દેશોમાં. સમયના પાલવમાં છે બધું દરિયાને દોષ દેશોમાં. કોઈ તરતો માણસ ડૂબે છે, કોઈ લાશ તરીને આવે છે. See the irony of time. That, and therefore you have to learn from this, that if you want to really, life is an ocean. And if you have to do best in this ocean of life, you must learn to float and not fight. And if you learn to float, you learn to be absolutely, as I said, without any weights, without any overtones, without any, prejudices, biases in your mind, in your thinking, in your perception, in your emotions, I think you can really, really do wonderful, friends. And therefore, you have to, what I would call as looking at life differently, we all have to learn what we call this very important terminology of insulation. The electric current, if it is naked, you touch a wire in its bare form, you'll get such a shock. But the wire, when insulated, all right, you grab it, no problems, right? We all have to insulate ourselves, friends, that we can protect ourselves, our mind, our emotions, our own self and our being and personality from these outside attacks of persons, situations, so-called calamities, adversities, challenges. Insulate, learn the art of insulation. The choice is yours, friends. If you have to look at life differently, you must first realize that the easiest way to do something is to deal with your own life, because it is your own on which you have full control. And if that is your vision, friends, it will make wonders. It's almost an hour. I'd like to complete in a couple of minutes, sticking to our time schedule, and then of course we'll have some time for interactions if we want. But there are a couple of things, friends, I also want to share with you. If you look at life, introspectively, the kind of problems and situations so many of us really get into, don't you think that it is all because of this 5-letter word what I call as words. The power of words. They say that words have both the explosive power of a nuclear bomb and the soothing effect of oil on troubled waters. Words can start a war, or words can usher peace. Just remember this, friends. Look at history. Just because some irresponsible words were uttered at some point of time, wars were waged out. And some sensible words of love and affection came out to be at the right time. They anointed the situation that you got peace. I'm mentioning this because many a times we do not realize the value of words. As they say, mind your language. Suresh Bhai teaches the language courses. But just as using the right grammar or the expressions is important, using the right words and using the right tone and the overtones also is extremely important. We don't realize this. We just try to hurl out abusive words, in a vociferous tone and then say sorry. Now, there is a very interesting story which says that there was this young boy who was absolutely having no control over his temper. And so his father said that every time, if you want to control your temper, every time you get angry, go in the backyard and put a nail on the tree. Put a nail on the tree. Khilo thoki devano, jhadma. So, it started from the first day. The first day the boy had so many nails. Then gradually, consciously, he started reducing. And then he went to the father and said, Father, after so many days now, today is the first day when I have not been required to put any nail on the tree. Father said, okay, but now do the reverse. Every day passes where you have not got angry or not got disturbed. You take out one nail. And then, there were 37 nails, so after 37 days, the boy went and said, Father, I've taken out all the nails. Father said, come with me. Let's have a look at the tree. You have taken out all the nails, but do you see how the tree looks with all those holes around? The message was this, friends. Many a times, we try to use words and then say, sorry. Sorry is taking out those nails. But can you really do something with those holes which have been made out? So what I'm trying to say is not that don't say sorry. Certainly you should say sorry, because the nail has no business to remain there. But don't get into or don't create situations where you have to again and over. This again is your conditioning of your own self. It's extremely important, friends. The power of words. I tell you, if you look around, think of, the Indian cricket team. They say that, analyzing that, one of the big factors, what is done to the cricket team is, those mental tonics that they get. And I think one of the best things that was done was by the coach, John Wright. The coach, if he uses the right words, to motivate and to cheer up the team at the right time, it can have a miraculous effect. Absolutely. The huddle which the Indian team goes into, that has got its own magic charm. Olympic gold medalists, or some of the best performing sports persons, or some of the greatest entertainers, they admit and acknowledge that it is this right kind of cheerful tonic that they have got, either by the cheerful words, inspiring or motivating words from somebody, or from the cheerful atmosphere in which you are around, or from your beautiful inspirational, motivational reading that you may have made. But these things, they really go to condition, and condition a long way. And therefore, friends, if you are to leave an indelible mark, in the lives of people around you, you will have to learn this. Along with what I call as you will all have to, we will all have to, friends, and I have practiced it, and I can tell from my own self-experience. There is a law which I call as the universal law of giving. I don't know whether you have heard about it, but there is this eternal law which is known as the universal law of giving, which says, whatever you give for the good of others, whatever you give for the good of others, be it time, love, or money, God keeps on returning to you in much greater abundance. Friends, just practice it out. I am sure so many of the elderly wise people here, they must have experienced it in their life. Whenever and friends, when you give, the problem is you always want to give but with an expectation. And what happens is when you give with expectation, then you get miserable. Because if you don't get... So the best thing is, again, what Gita says, karmanyavadhikaraste means give, do, act, perform, but without expectation. Because most of the miseries of life, they arise from expectations. But if you do things without expectation, I tell you the law of nature is such. God is so merciful and bountiful. Friends, just try this out. Whatever you give for the good of others, and not necessarily, it may be time, it may be love, it may be money, God keeps on returning to you in much greater abundance. Many a times, maybe not through the same person or from the same situation. See, I tell you, God is so wonderful. Sometimes, we, just as you see the people who are handicapped, people who don't have eyesight or people who don't have limbs, they are gifted with something extra so that they can cover up. In the same way in your life, maybe you may have a wife who is not as understanding, but then God will be nice and kind to you. He'll give you children who are so delightful. Maybe you have some friends who are not the right kind of friends that you would have expected them to do things to you. God will ensure that He reimburses or reciprocates in some other way. So don't expect. And as I said, if there is goodness that you give, the law of nature will ensure that the return comes to you always. And I tell you, the joy in giving, the sheer joy that you get in giving is one of the most exquisite, one of the most delightful experiences of life. You have to just try it out, friends. And as I said, the last point that I want to make is, friends, or rather the last 2 points I want to make for my today's presentation before I close, is that we must practice, and we must, if we have to look at life differently, I have to think, as I was talking about priorities earlier, I have to harmonize, I have to balance 4 things of life. Many of us do 1 or 2 or 3, but not all the 4. And if you are able to balance it out, and the 4 are your family, your work, family is your own kith and kin, work is your career, your job, whatever it be, your business, profession, social, the society, what you do for the people around, as I said, the universal law of giving where you can practice to its utmost. And the last but not the least is spiritual. So we are talking of personal, professional, social, and spiritual. 2 P's and 2 S. Personal, that is our family around. Professional is your career, business, vocation, whatever you're talking about. You must have goals, priorities, but balance this. Let me remind you, we should not get into the situations Datta, S.M. Datta told. I said, I want this message to go to every young executive, that while you are craving for your success and for your position and for your money and whatnot, please, for God's sake, don't forget your family. Because if you do one at the cost of the other, it will be a more than big sacrifice. You must learn the art of balancing, harmonizing. You should also learn, while you do other things, that you have an obligation to society. And most important is spiritual, for your own self, soothing your own soul, grooming your own self, your conscience. And therefore, friends, I would like to end with a small, what I call as prayer. The power of prayer. I think when we have to look at life and look at life differently, friends, we must understand that prayer can work miracles. As Ralph Waldo Trine, an author who wrote a book more than 100 years ago, unfortunately that book is out of print. You don't get English copies available. There are some very nice Gujarati translations. One of the book our foundation brought out. And I only wish, in fact, in my book, Inspirational Gems, I have profusely quoted from that book, where the title of the book says, In Tune with the Infinite. Because if all this, what I said earlier, you want to effectively and successfully and meaningfully achieve in life, you can only do in tune with the infinite. Because when you have a direct connection with the Lord, you get all the source of power. And how do you establish that connection? That is through prayer. And prayer does not mean, you can have your own, devise your own innovative, meaningful way. I am not talking of any those tilaks and going and doing sashtangs or going to a particular temple and trying to do all kinds of hatha yogas and all that. No, friend. In your own simple way, whatever it is, but it is communion with Lord. Because if that communion is achieved, you get your biggest source of power through which you can really live your life most meaningfully. And therefore, friends, I want to just share with you while I conclude. My prayer made all the difference. It's a beautiful poem. Many a times we don't realize this. And I'll end with the final quote. The prayer says, or the poem says, I got up early one morning and rushed right into the day. I had so much to accomplish that I didn't have time to pray. Many a times we say, don't even get time to remember God. I'm so busy. Problems just tumbled about me, the poet says, and heavier came each task. Why doesn't God help me, I wonder? God answered, you didn't ask. You didn't ask. I wanted to see joy and beauty, but the day toiled on grey and bleak. I wondered why God didn't show me. He said, but you didn't seek. I tried to feel God's presence. I used all my keys at the lock. God gently and lovingly chided, my child, you didn't knock. So, finally the poet admits, so I woke up early this morning and took my time to pray, and it made all the difference, for I had my great day. Friends, let me tell you, if you want to have a great day, start with a small prayer. And use your prayer throughout all day. And without any formalities, anything, just in the bottom of your heart, in your mind, think that God is with you. Because He is omnipresent. There is no reason why. In fact, Aham Brahmasmi, that's what our Vedas and Upanishads say. He is very much sitting within you. You have to only realize that you can draw power from Him. And that is why, friends, no wonder I always, here from this forum, I conclude with this message over and over again, that the grace of Almighty can only shower on us if only we remember. This is the entire message. If I have to say one thought of Gita, what Krishna said to Arjun, how do you translate it in one line? When the Lord said, Sharanam Mama, come to me and surrender yourself. And Arjun, having realized that, and he transformed, because the moment he realized that the Lord Almighty was with him, he had all the power. to fight, any number of armies in the world. And therefore, friends, if nothing more, if just this prayer we say, Lord, help me to remember that nothing is going to happen today which you and I together cannot handle. If I think this is the spirit of life, if this is how we start viewing life, if this is how we look at life differently, friends, let me assure you, it will make wonders and would only tempt you to share this beautiful couplet where the Shire has so beautifully said that the most difficult of his journeys, were lightened with such millions of lamps across on his way, when the Shire said, हमें सहल हो गई मंजिलें हवा के रुख भी बदल गए हमें सहल हो गई मंजिलें हवा के रुख भी बदल गए तेरा हाथ हाथ में आ गया तो चिराग राह में जल गए. I only wish that may Lord Almighty light millions of lamps across all our ways if we all learn to how to look at life differently. Thank you very much.